Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Dota 2 running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5560U. Now the game is currently running at the lowest in-game graphics settings. Now you have a choice between either using the graphics presets or, manually setting your stuff, and we're just going with the preset slider. Right now it's going for the best performance. Now we're taking a look at a replay here from a tournament just so that we get a consistent scene. And as you can see here, with the best possible performance that we can get out of this at the full 1080p resolution with 25 watts of TDP, we're pretty much getting a 1% low that is practically at 60 with averages that are pretty much at 100 FPS. While high intensity battles might be able to cause the FPS to fluctuate, at these settings it's not really going to be that bad of an experience, but visually speaking the game does take a pretty noticeable hit. It's definitely not a looker like this, but it at least does perform really well. Of course, we can try to bump it up just one tier and see if we can maintain some good visual quality and performance here. Unfortunately, just going up one tier in terms of graphics actually does make a noticeable impact in terms of both visuals, but also the performance. And the performance hit is pretty dramatic. We pretty much go from having an FPS over 100 with 1% lows above 60 to now an FPS average that is pretty much just at 80 with 1% lows at 40. That pretty much means that we're going to have a noticeably worse time just because of the fact that we are dipping down pretty regularly below the actual refresh rate of pretty much any display out there. While if we kept our 1% lows above 60, it pretty much meant that we were never going to be going below the refresh rate of the display, so everything was going to be as smooth as it could be at all times. Now, of course, if you have a 144 hertz display, you will definitely notice the difference here in particular. And that is exactly what I have this hooked up to, so it definitely was a noticeable difference in terms of smoothness. And again, you're looking at a replay right now just for the consistency aspect of it, but I did actually play the game at each specific setting just to see if there was any noticeable input issues. And at least here with these settings, there wasn't any. It just did not feel as smooth and as responsive just because of those dips, which mostly end up happening in big fights, but that's really when you want things to be the most responsive. Of course, we can't see what bumping up the graphics one more tier actually ends up doing. And it's at this point that things really start to fall apart. We're not even maxed out in terms of graphics, and already we are getting some pretty abysmal averages, and our 1% lows are looking really rough. And as you can see by the frame times, pretty much anytime any big effect happens, we're getting these noticeable spikes. The FPS will start to recover once a big battle's over, but in the middle of a fight, you're gonna be closer to a 30 FPS than anything else. And our 1% lows being just in the teens throughout a lot of this pretty much lets us know that things are gonna be rough. Now, the 1% lows by the end of this do recover a little bit. I mean, we ended up with an FPS average of 46 and 1% lows of 22, but this is not exactly the most ideal experience, especially for something that is supposed to be an esports title. You want things to be responsive in a game like this, because a lot of the time it's quick decisions that you have to make that will determine whether or not you survive certain encounters. So being able to get as much information from the game as possible in one go is really important, and having a refresh rate this low means that you are missing out on key information. It can make the timing of things pretty difficult. And again, this is not even things maxed out. We can definitely take a look at how it performs with everything maxed out. Now, at the absolute maximum settings, there is an impact, though it isn't as big as it was before. It really seems like the leap from the previous preset is one of the largest in terms of impact to the overall performance. But in general, this is just not a great experience. Again, you're going to be a lot closer to 30 FPS than anything else when you're in a battle. Our 1% lows will drop into the teens. By the end of it, it pretty much recovered to around the same level as the previous setting, where we ended up at 22 FPS for the 1% lows, but our averages did also take a hit, where now we're down to a 44 FPS average. Not as huge of a difference, but it's still already taking a blow in a situation where things weren't looking great. So if you're looking to play Dota 2 on this specific system, or any system that has this specific Radeon iGPU, which means there are certain i3s out there that have the exact same iGPU, in a game like this, the extra cores cores of the 5560U aren't really going to be doing anything, so I would not expect gaming performance to be very different at all. In a lot of these situations, we're GPU limited anyway, so the GPU performance will actually end up being pretty much identical. But in general, I would say that the game is playable if you're going to play it at the lowest possible settings. Game doesn't look great. You can probably adjust some things from there and get this to be decent enough, but I would definitely recommend just adjusting settings manually yourself and figuring out what works for you instead of just going with the presets, because if you go with the presets, you really take a huge performance hit. Now, one thing else to note is that the game does actually support FSR. Did not try it out on here at all, just because I personally don't like the implementation of it in here. A lot of the times it doesn't really improve the performance at all, at least with an iGPU, and we kind of just end up with a blurrier image. But anyways, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.